I'm interested in, as you have practiced and you've come into this embodiment, what has your understanding of love, how has it revealed itself? What does that practice look like for you? Have you shifted what love meant from the time that you were younger into now with you embodying it? That contrast, share about that contrast between when you were in church and you don't feel like it was embodied, and now that you're embodying it. What language would you put towards love and how that looks like in your life?
I love this question because love is such a heavy construct. And so my embodiment, my lived experience does come from both the clinical background of understanding our wounds, our traumas, our limitations, and how we create an identity and we live through that and call it something. And so looking at my life in totality, I recognize that um, love in the way that I experienced it from a religious standpoint started with turning the other cheek. You don't have to like be angry when someone does you wrong. You turn the other cheek. Okay. Um, Honor thy neighbor as you love yourself. Honor thy mother and father. Love for me was this thing outside of myself, this thing that I had to give in order to be a good person, to be a good Christian, to be accepted. And that shaped how I moved about the world, even going back to my perspective of the lack that I received in my mothering, right? That came through a perspective of love. And so what I found when it came to Christianity was that I needed to be these things for people. But what Christianity did not teach me as to what to be for myself. And so for me now, that is the foundation of love. How do I love myself to be the embodiment of love to then allow it to translate to other people? And so there's a book that I started reading called Sensual Faith. Creme de la creme, recommend to everyone because it deconstructs religion, specifically Christianity, in this way of calling you back home to your body, tapping into your sensuality, your sexuality, because we know the Bible says, don't do that until marriage. Don't feel it. There's just no context for how to live in these human bodies, which stems back to love. And so in my deconstruction and in my lived practices now, love is really about how do I fill my cup so that it overflows and I can give the overflow to those that I love? Do I have the capacity to give when my cup is not full because the connection is reciprocal? Like, yes, when we think of like love in the context of the Bible, it's patient, it's kind, it's gentle. It does not boast or brag. It's not envious. Those things I still hold as a foundational truth. So we can keep that one. Okay. And it comes to self first. How am I kind to myself? How am I patient with myself? Do I boast and brag? Do I live from my ego? Right. And so coming to self first has been the practice of love.
When you think about this transition from this religious view to embodying Christ consciousness, what fruit are you seeing on this side that you can share? Like, I'm interested in fruit. I see fruit from practicing or at least try my best to understand what that means to be kind to myself and to others. Because if I'm kind to myself and it says love your neighbor as yourself, then when I'm kind to myself, it's easy for me to identify how to be kind to someone else because I started with knowing how to do that for myself. But if I hate myself, it's easy for me to find all the wrong things and to hate other people. So that fruit, I don't know if there was fruit here in this lens of life, but I'm more interested in the fruit now in your deconstructing journey long term. What fruit are you seeing from shifting this way versus your upbringing?
Mm. So firstly, I will say my upbringing in the Christian faith is pretty solid. Like, yes, I have some church hurt experiences, but for the most part, The way that Christianity was given to me through my same childhood pastor was pretty good foundationally. And so let's just recap what the fruits are for the listeners. And it's so funny that I'm even about to do this because I grew up in the church and we had children's church. And that's how I learned a lot of my things. So it's going to come out in the
Let's
song, but
sing
here
it.
we go. So we have love and joy, peace and patience, lots of kindness, goodness too, faithfulness and gentleness, self-control, and me and you. Dun 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 dun. Fruits of the spirit.
Yay.
Dun, 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 dun. You can count on
Oh.
us. Okay. So so we have the fruits of the spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, meekness, self-control. Okay. And so when I think about those, they're more embodied now. Because life isn't about all the noise. And so when I think about um love, right? The embodiment of love. How do I love myself? How do I talk to myself? How do I care and nurture myself? Caretaking and nurturing are different things. Okay. And then how does that translate to the world? Joy. What does joy look like? And that, coming back clinically, right? We have to have language for the emotions that we feel. We are not the emotion. It's an indicator that we feel and flow through. So when we experience joy, it's not the same as excitement. In this world that we live in, they have us chasing this high, this dopamine kick of excitement. But joy is, what am I grateful for every day? What lights me up just because? And for me, that's the gratitude for the sun, or walking out to the beach and sitting on the shores and seeing a dolphin come up. Like, that's joyous. Okay, peace. How do you practice peace? What do you do in the waiting? Okay, that's the lifestyle. And so um peace is an inside job. For me, in my lived experience, I don't need closure. I don't need um, reconciliation. I don't need an apology to have peace within. And that is a practice of cultivating that peace. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness. What is that? What is that dedication to myself? I don't like to use the term discipline. I like to say devotion, because everything needs to be a little romanticized. Everything needs to have a little sprinkle of love. And so how am I a good and faithful servant to the things that I want to be devoted to the things that placed me in my purpose? Okay? And then goodness. How am I just good? It's not about doing goodness. It's about being goodness. And so for me, the fruits of the spirit always point back to the fact that it's an inside job. And we live in a society that's so performative. We perform for
Mm.
love. We perform for the paycheck. We perform for the relationship. And it's an inside job. And so um, we have to remember that we attract what we are. So we have to be mindful of our fruit and how we're nurturing our own gardens to even allow that to reflect in our realities.
It's all of this all pieces together, because everything you just said in a few last sentences is some of the writing I've been working through. One of the questions I have, and I want you to talk through this a little bit more, is that last fruit of goodness, because understanding what is good, it looks different depending on what people's perception of life is, their perspective of life, what side of the world they see. And everyone has a different understanding of good. When you say practicing goodness, can you extend that a little bit? Like, what is good to you?
This is a beautiful question because the topic of goodness is something that I come back to every day, right? And so when I do these self check-ins, goodness may look different day to day, moment by moment. As I mentioned, emotions, they are like a wave, right? And I talk a lot about this in my nonprofit, Tide and Temple. We really prioritize emotional wellness, somatics, neuroplasticity, because we have to be well in all the things. And so, say if I wake up, I've had a long week, barely ate, I'm a little tired. goodness today looks different than it did yesterday or a week ago, right? Because goodness now is how can I fill my cup? How can I sustain myself to be good to me? Okay? If I am working hard on being good to me, maybe I don't have the capacity to be goodness and help out my neighbor. I can still be kind. I can still say, "Hey, this is my capacity for today. I'll get with you another day." I don't have the capacity. And so when we perform goodness, that's the moment we abandon ourselves. And my hand is raised, the lived experience is there where I'm like, my cup isn't full, but you can have the cup because I want to be seen as good. So here's the cup. And I was like, no, if I don't have it, I have to first like practice goodness to me, which means nurturing my body, tending to the emotions that are present, like sitting with myself long enough to say, wait a minute, there's sadness here. Let me listen to that. Let me be good to self. And then that translates to others because if I can sit with my emotion of sadness, when I have the capacity, I can sit with you in your sadness. I can be good. Also thinking about goodness in the context of the earth and all of her inhabitants, right? How are you good to the birds, to the animals in the sea, to the plants, to the trees? I know a lot of people clown us tree huggers, and it's a real thing because every living thing on this planet has energy. There is a universal energy source that is within all life. So how are you being goodness to all living things of this earth? And so when I hold that perspective of like, wow, I reverence this tree because I reverence me. It's just a different lens on.
I'm interested